My granddad had a misquote for everything. He would either mess it up completely or only remember part of it. He was a regular Mrs. Malaprop. One of his favourite sayings was, "Erudite mentis," and he said that it meant, education is the sharpest tool. It wasn't until I studied Latin myself that I realised that he only had part of the story straight. I have to say, however, that he never lost his zest for learning and was an eager embracer of new ideas. Last year, he would have been 100. A couple of years before he died, I remember him telling me about how much things had changed during his lifetime, and how, when he was just a schoolboy, he used to watch the sailing ships, tacking across the harbour into the wharves, bringing exotic cargo from the other side of the world. Things that were mere dreams and comic book fiction were now a reality. From sailing ships to jumbo jets, rocket ships to a man on the moon. And to us, simple things like computers and smartphones were, to him and his generation, almost beyond imagining. Ever since I was little, he would remind me time and time again about the importance of having an education, and would often say to me, "I wonder what changes the next generation will bring." Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are the next generation. And whilst we may have achieved a lot since Granddad's time, today, my idea is that if education had been truly universal, open to every child of every age, of every race, colour, religion, sex or creed, the knowledge and possibilities we may have had would have been absolutely limitless. It was Nelson Mandela who said that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. I do believe that Mandela was not just referring to reading, writing, and arithmetic, but rather to the essence of an education. The ability to recognise possibility, to utilise the knowledge available in the world to make a difference, and to change the world for the better. In 1965, Gordon Moore, co-founder of Intel, predicted that all of the computing power in the world would double roughly every 2 years. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now doubling every 3 months. Moore's law talks to us about the knowledge that we have in our world today, and it is how we harness this knowledge in our lives that allows us to fit more into the time we have, thus almost giving the illusion of speeding up time itself. Our world is changing. Huge changes everywhere to everywhere. Artificial intelligence, health, education, 3D printing, agriculture and employment. Software and operating systems will completely transform the economic structures and models of most traditional industries within the next 5 to 10 years. Welcome to the next industrial revolution, the exponential age. Let me introduce you to IBM's machine, simply named Watson. Watson is able to give you basic legal advice within seconds with 90% accuracy, compared with 17% accuracy when done by humans. As well as this, it is also able to assist doctors in diagnosing cancer patients with an accuracy rate 4 times higher than that of any human. Experts say that by 2025, the automobile industry will change forever. No one will own a car. Instead, you will call a driverless car, yes, a driverless car, on your smartphone. It will pick you up and drive you to your destination. You will not need to park it or fill it with petrol. You only pay for the trip. Currently, more than 1.2 million people worldwide die in car accidents per annum. On average, an accident occurs every 60,000 miles driven. But with autonomous driving, this number will significantly decrease, and millions of lives will be saved in the process. San Francisco startup company Otto made headlines last year for completing the world's first shipment by self-driving truck. Thanks to a $30,000 retrofit, on the 20th of October 2016, this conventional 18-wheeler truck managed to deliver 50,000 cans of Budweiser from a brewery in Fort Collins through Denver to Colorado Springs, traveling a total stretch of over 120 miles without a driver. The growth of knowledge in our world today is unprecedented. We have gone from working with chalkboards to working with iPads. But we must realize that with the good, there is also the bad. We live in a world where a large portion of our population is denied the one thing that they all deserve: a proper education. A world where 2/3 of the world's uneducated children are female. Educational deprivation occurs on the basis of gender, as well as socioeconomic and, sadly, religious reasons. Recent studies suggest that in the school year ending in 2013, 124 million children worldwide, aged roughly between 6 and 15, have either never started school or have dropped out partway through. And now, this is compared with 122 million in 2011. This means that over the span of just 2 years, the amount of uneducated people in our world has grown by 2 million. It is unfathomable that such a prolific number of people cannot attain the education that they require for a better future in this contemporary world of ours. If they say that knowledge is power, then how come they don't realize that it is most powerful when it is shared? Education deserves to be universal. It deserves to be deserved by all. Children with disabilities are perhaps some of the most vulnerable and excluded people in the world. Hidden at home or placed in special institutions, a child with a disability often misses out on having a decent education, being less likely to attend school, and, inevitably, will most likely never progress to secondary school. Oftentimes, they suffer the double disability of physical and economic deprivation. And, as Granddad used to say, therein lies the rub. For denying these millions of next-generation children will not only have a lifelong impact upon their learning, achievement, and employment opportunities, it will also be denying us the knowledge that they would have added to our world. This, in turn, will hinder our potential scientific, economic, social, and human development, thus putting the brakes on Moore's law of exponential knowledge. Ladies and gentlemen, I come to you today to put forward a simple idea. What if, from the very beginning, every human being on Earth had access to an education? Let us imagine a parallel universe, an alternate timeline, if you will, where every man, woman, and child, regardless of race, gender, religion, or social status, had access to an education. A world where a young girl is not prohibited from going to school simply because she's a girl. A world where anybody can attain the education that they deserve despite their disability. A world where we have made use of all of this untapped potential that has been lying dormant for so long. Granddad used to watch the sailing ships coming in from the other side of the world. And I can stand here and access the Smithsonian on my smartphone. So let us dive down this rabbit hole and imagine what kind of lives we'd be leading. What would our world landscape be like? What would our universe be? How many more Picassos, Beethovens would we have? How many more Marie Curies, Aung San Suu Kyi's, Temple Grandins, Mother Teresa's would we have? Would we have flying cars? Hoverboards that actually hovered? Would we have discovered a cure for cancer? Would the state of origin, instead of being Queensland versus New South Wales, be Mars versus Neptune? As a student of economics, I have learned about something called the production possibility curve, a graphical model that economists use in everyday thinking to illustrate how the allocation of our resources would impact our society. Sadly, we are not using our resources to their fullest potential, but if we make use of all this untapped potential, this would cause the production possibility curve to expand, thus resulting in unprecedented increases in employment, economic competition, productivity, efficiency, and it will also improve our overall standard of living. Research suggests that 65 low and middle income countries lose around $92 billion per year by failing to educate girls to the same standard as boys. As well as this, it has been proven that if all children in low-income countries were to obtain basic reading skills in school, then world poverty would reduce by 12%. As well as this, recent UNESCO data confirms that if all mothers across the globe were to attain a primary education, then maternal deaths would be reduced by 2/3. These, however, are all just hypotheticals. Unless anybody here in the audience has a time machine handy, we are unable to reach this parallel universe, to go to this different timeline. All we have is now. The most important thing that we need to remember is that the only difference between those who have access to an education and those who don't is their place of birth. The only difference between literate people like ourselves and those who are being deprived the education that they deserve is our privilege. So let us use this privilege of ours to raise our voices and enable the shackled and deprived to finally be heard. With education, we can throw light upon oppression and fundamentalism. For bigotry, ignorance, and prejudice cannot thrive in the daylight. Oh, and by the way, for those of you who are wondering about Grandad, the actual saying was, mens erudita est, acutissimum telum bellatoris. And the proper translation was, an educated mind is a warrior's sharpest weapon. Thank you.